This is Identity at the Center. If it has anything to do with IAM, this is the go-to podcast. Now your hosts, Jim McDonald and Jeff Steadman.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Not so bad. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, I got to meet a lot of people here at the Authenticate 2023 conference. A lot of people are just finding out about the podcast.
It's amazing.
And, well, yeah.
Amazing, but not shocking, I don't think.
No, not shocking.
We don't advertise. We have no budget. It's a two-man show.
Yeah, and I keep thinking back to how we started. Very humble beginnings.
Very humble.
Like, let's record this conversation and see if anybody listens. And now here we are, like the mid 240s and, still humming along. What do you think?
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come along. But, for the love of the game. That's how I look at it. Yeah,
I think what has been really great is just, this is not our day job, right? We don't.
Not by a long shot.
Not by a long shot, right?
Sometimes it feels like it, but it is not.
Yeah, but we have a very good employer who's been willing to bankroll us being out here. I think, yes, we also had help from the FIDO conference, FIDO Alliance, in terms of, we had a great room. We didn't have to pay for it, and we had passes to the conference. But, our RSM employer had to pick up the tab so that we could travel here and eat. Eating is very important, right?
Yeah, somewhat.
It's very much appreciated by both of us, the contribution that they've made to the podcast and to really to the listening audience to be able to hear all the content that we've put out.
Yep, and we don't do commercials, so that's about as far as we'll take it. But yeah, hire Jim and I to do identity stuff for you. Thanks.
Subtle hint.
Yeah. Why don't we start our conversation with a talk about passkeys, because I want to introduce our guests and get right into this. I want to introduce Ori Eisen. He is a founder and CEO at Trusona. Welcome to the show, Ori.
Thank you for having me, the two J's.
Well, thanks for taking the time. You literally just fell off of a plane and came over here, and now we're having this conversation. I guess I feel like I've seen and heard you speak so many times over the last really decade since I've been attending identity conferences. And one, you're a natural. Two, I want to understand what your identity origin story is, because whenever we have someone on for the first time, why are you the way you are? It comes up. Why are you an identity? Is it something that you chose, or did it choose you?
Wonderful. I'm really thankful for being here. I know you started with, this is not your day job, but you are the cool identity podcast. Let me just say this, and I had it on my to-do list. I'm not joking. And somebody on my team said, well, only the best people can get on the show. And I said, well, let me see if they'll have me. So first of all, thank you for that.
We said no a couple times, and then said, okay. Or,
yeah, fine.
I'm just kidding.
No payments was made to these guys to be on this show. So thank you, first and foremost. It is important for you to tell the story of identity, because it's kind of this ugly stepdaughter of the industry. I mean, people know cybersecurity, people know fraud, people know, AML, KYC, these things, but identity is who's an identity? And all of a sudden you see every year that goes by, identity, and I'm not just saying it as a plug, is at the center. It's just that it was invisible. Just like you don't think about air because it's there all the time. You don't think about electricity because it's there, or water. Identity is always there, but it's no one's thinking about it until you need to think about it. So,
I always struggle with people asking me, what do you do? And it's okay, well, I work in identity, or, well, what does that mean? Actually, the guy at dinner the other night asked us what we did. And so we work in identity, and it's oh, you guys write coders? I'm no, I'm more I tell people what to do. How do you describe what you do to people who are not in the identity world?
I'll tell you what I tell my mom, and she ends up telling all of her friends, he's in computers, which is just what people see you do.
You work at Best Buy.
I tell people for the longest time since Trusona started that I'm about to get rid of passwords. And even now on the flight here, people sit next to me and say oh, I love you. And that's a visceral emotional response to, we can do without password? Sure. I say but wait, but the systems underneath it, which I don't go into the details because then they blow up. Then when you say IAM, that's it, you lost them. I don't go into that detail. I just give him the high level. Here's the benefit. Here's what will happen in your life as a result of the identity industry coming together. And then people say, there's a show about that? Like, there's a conference about that? As in, like,
Not just one.
like polka
a few.
dancers
Yeah.
or something like that. So I'll start with the origin story because it would literally land us all the way to today. I've been in fraud and financial fraud for the past 22 years. I started a company a year before PayPal that was the first to move money on the internet. I was the first startup to be shut down by Visa because we didn't know at the time that IP addresses in Nigeria and credit card in New York City don't really go together. But we learned really, really quick. And even if you go back to 1998, 1999, you realize identity was there all the time. It's just we never called it that. We called it credit card fraud. But if you say, why is there a credit card? Because I don't know who is on the other end. And when you ask who, that's an identity question right there. So I kind of cut my chops in the identity world of online fraud and credit card. I had a fantastic career in banking, and later on I was the head of risk at American Express on the issuing side. But I never thought in those days that I'm in identity, even though now when you look back, you're like, you've always been there. It's just that it has so many different sides. It's like the elephant, that one holds the trunk, one holds the tail, one holds... Everybody thinks it's different, but no. It is all about who is on the other end. I use the cartoon that you probably know from The New Yorker, which is about to be 28 years old now, with the two dogs. No one knows on the internet you're a dog, right? That's an identity story. But again, we're not thinking about it naturally this way. So when I started my third startup called the 41st Parameter, which was known as a fraud detection company, online e-commerce stuff, again, not the word identity. If you really dig inside and you see it was all about saying, does this transaction belong to this person? Again, identity was always there, but I never thought about it in that context. So after the company was acquired, I spent a year around the world with Frank Abagnale, kind of promoting the idea. And then I was in between exits, which is code word to I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grow up. So in 2014, I found myself for the first time kind of not doing, fraud and risk management and that stuff. And I went back to my investors at Kleiner Perkins and I said, I want to do another startup. And they say, whoa. You just padded your wallet with all the money you can ever imagine. You probably will be tired and sick after 3 months of doing whatever it is you're going to do, and you're going to leave us on a lurch. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So like, you are the second time success. We don't found those guys because we know what happened to you guys. I'm like, are you serious? They said, yes. I said, well, how do I ever undo this? They said, go and have an existential crisis. I'm not kidding. That's what Randy told me.
That was the advice you received.
Yes. And we will know if you had it or not. And come back to us when you find a problem you really care about and you want to solve, and you will do even if no one pays you to do it. I'm like, whoa. So it took me 4 months. Don't ask silly questions, but I did go to a coffee shop every day to think about what I want to do. And, in my life journey, every day I offered the coffee shop guys, hey, you can make more money if you do this, and you'll get more customers if you advertise there. And eventually I became a partner in that coffee shop, and eventually I owned that coffee shop in the 4 months that I was looking for something to do. But one day was the moment where this guy, who's by the way still there for the last 9 years, he was there today, comes and reads his newspaper every single day in that coffee shop, and I was observing him. And one day it just clicked and dawned on me, and I said to him, Mark, I'm not here to read the headlines. I'm here to make the headlines. I can't be sitting here with you in this coffee shop and I have to go do something in the world. I felt like, what am I doing? So I called Ted Schlein, who invested in me in the last company. I said, Ted, let me tell you what we need to do. We need to take that cartoon with the two dogs. We need to go solve it. He's like, yeah, but that's too big of a problem to solve. You need a whole new internet. I said, let me write a white paper about that. So I spend 2 weeks and I write a white paper that you can go download on our website called I2, which is a reimagination of all the sickness, all the issues we had in I1, which is the current internet. And let me just sum it up for you. It's the identity that is broken. We don't know who is on the other end. So when we started this company, we said the key is to know the true persona of who's on the other end. And now you know why we're called Trusona. But that was the pivotal moment to say, we have to fix this. Now, I will tell you, just for the record, because I don't want to be a revisionist, even the biggest name, and I'm going to drop a name because I prepared for this podcast for 6 months. John Doerr, if you hear this, you were with me in the room where you looked at me and I looked at you and you said, wait a second, are you going to rewrite the TCP IP protocol? I said, yes. If that's what it means to fix this, then yes, I want to leave a better internet for my kids. The internet is the sum of our ambition as humans. And if we're not taking care of it, you know who's going to own it? The spammers, which is now 97% of all emails are spam. There, pause for effect. The phishing emails, I mean, it is just insanity what's happening there. So if we don't stop to fix this, like from the root, a root canal job, let me tell you, let me retire on an island and really do nothing and just watch this fall. But I said, as long as I have any energy in me, and I still do, I hope, I want to go fix this problem. And that's how Trusona was born. And I found myself in the identity space.
So did it pick you or did you pick it?
It picked me. There's no choice. I'm not going to mince words. I did not make the correlation between everything that led to that moment, that in every single job, in every single moment, in every single cracked case we had, identity was always there as the broken piece. And if you wanted to go fix it, you have to start there. Yeah. The rest really doesn't matter. And I'll just give you one word. We did not start with passwordless. And if you don't mind, ask me how we got here. But we started with the world's most secure and insured by an A-plus rated insurance company of $1 million per login if we're wrong. Because everybody, if you go to the RSA show, says we're the best. How can you tell as a buyer who's the best? Can you? No. All these marketing guys say, we're the best, we're the best. There's no way to know. I said, like, what will be the ultimate litmus test to you're the best that an insurance company is willing to back it?
Put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. So I told Kleiner Perkins, we are going to do that. And like, oh, crazy Israeli guy. I'm like, I don't care. Because otherwise you want me to be put on the plaster of all 9,000 companies in cybersecurity to say I'm better than them. How can I possibly rise above the noise if we don't do this? And that's how Trusona started. But very quickly we realized people don't want security because we made the product that does this. But they say, no, but I don't want to carry the token. No, I don't want to do identity proofing in person. And I said, guys, you don't want security. What you really, really want is convenience. And that's how we ended up in the passwordless universe.
So tell me about Trusona and your role as CEO there. Two-part question. For those people who aren't familiar with Trusona, just give us kind of the elevator pitch of the problems that you guys look to solve and solutions you bring. And then two, what does the CEO of an identity company do?
I'll start with the second part because it's easy. Worry. Now let me answer the first part. The elevator pitch today is such that it took years to get the FIDO organization to get critical mass. It took more years to defocus from just hardware-based APIs to what if I don't want to use hardware? What if I want to use my phone? And that's kind of the second evolution. And the biggest blessing the world has seen is last June 6th, 2022, is when Apple announces we're joining. That is how Trusona came to have a pitch that says, now that all the ducks are aligned, because we've helped, and we'll talk about how we helped and in what way, because there was a lot of help. Now it's the job of the implementers, the relying parties, RPs if you're in the hood, to actually take the glove, pick it up, go to your boss. I'm going to talk about that because getting budgets and approval is where things are getting stuck now, and say it is no longer a dream. It is no longer tomorrow. It is now, and there's a race. And we will talk about maybe some of the biggest names already implemented and announced it. That's it. If you did not realize that passwordless is now the future, then let me tell you, I don't know where under which rock, which digital rock you live. But now Trusona is, so here's the pitch. We are helping companies that want to implement passkeys right the first time. Let me explain. Yes, it's a standard. It's an API. You can say, I can do this myself. Let me just clap. I hope you hear that, okay? But unfortunately, some of the biggest brands have taken 16 iterations to get there because it is not obvious. Why? Because it's never been done before. It is unlike passwords, that you have a million examples from all over the world of what words to use, what size buttons. This has never been done before. So go explain to my mom, God help you, what passkeys are and why does she need them? That was a silence for all the passwords I just killed with this one sentence.
No, I mean, you can't blame people for being skeptical. People have been pontificating on the end of the password for
60
a
years.
long time, and it's still here. I say, this is the year of the passkey for sure. It makes total sense. We've got all the major device platforms behind this. Yes, this is probably real. It's probably going to happen this time. But Identity Center podcast has, I'll make Jeff happy, thousands of subscribers. It's more than that, but it's a lot of subscribers. Not everybody understands what passkeys are. So take it down to the level, maybe not to the level that your mom's going to understand it, but people with, some techie background maybe, but try to make it, easy to understand.
I did not forget to answer the question about what do I do as a CEO. I'll get there.
You said worry.
But
That was
I
good
said
enough for me.
worry is a very, very good center point because I worry that the world as a whole, our industry will not move fast enough. And every day we don't make a move in this direction, we're just losing another cyber battle, which I'm just tired after being in this industry for so long. This industry means from the beginning of my career. I just want to see it in my lifetime. Yes, I said it. And I want my kids to have a better internet than we all got because ours is like a block of Swiss cheese. It's full of holes. There, I said it. So let me explain passkeys, and then I want to explain what I said before, why people even need help from companies like Trusona. Because otherwise, hey, it's an API. I know APIs. Passkeys are a replacement for passwords. Now, before I explain what it does, let's ask ourselves, well, why are passwords bad? Why do they need to be expunged? We lived with them for so long, right? And they're free. Why do I need to do anything different?
Free like a puppy.
That's true. Free like a puppy.
So there are three reasons. The first is until passkeys existed, no one could answer this simple question. Do you know how many people are getting stuck the first time they're trying to log in with username and password? Because until you have a second door called passwordless door, you couldn't compare the two. There was just one thing. The moment we started our UX research, we found out an interesting number. 59% of people who are trying to log in with the username password you gave them that was free are not getting through. Now, some give up and go do something else. Some give up, go to a competitor, and some take a journey called password reset. Let me explain what happens to those people. They are not fans of the brand. It might cost you now an SMS OTP to get them back in. Okay, I lied. It might cost you a phone call to get them back in. And all of a sudden you realize when you analyze your call center logs, 30-some% of all calls are about account lockouts. So the first reason to get rid of passwords is they are a failure point in the very moment you want your customers to come in and do something. Look at their healthcare records, log into a bank, buy something, or bet online. That was a plug for later. The second reason why I want to get rid of passwords, which is why passkeys were invented, is phishing. All those emails that ask my mom and other people, please give me your account, and she tells me, but it came from my bank, it has the logo, and you told me the internet is good, right? I'm in those conversations, so I can see how people who didn't grow up online, it's not obvious to them that this is not a good email. So if you set the password, note that I didn't say how complex it is, because we'll make a point today on this podcast that it does not matter how long the password is anymore. Let me say it again. It could be 30 characters, upper, lower. Who cares? If I'm giving it away to the attacker, does it matter how long it is? If it's being stolen from a database that is centralized, does it matter how long it is? No, stop doing it to people. It doesn't work. If it worked, we wouldn't be here today recording at the Authenticate show.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
We would have gone to 30-character passwords 20 years ago, and the problem would have been solved. So I want to ask you a really hard question, or I really do think this is a hard question.
Please.
Okay, so Google, Microsoft, Apple support FIDO, support passkeys. Are they doing this out of the goodness of their own heart? Are they trying to become the IDP of choice? Or is there some other motivation?
I will answer your question. It is not a hard question. I'm not beholden to anybody. So I'll give you my opinion. If I'm right or wrong, that's a different question. But let me tell you what I think is going on based on some data. Let's start with Google. Do you know that Google is free? Like when you use Gmail and all them searches, right? It's free. Okay. But do you know that people forget their password to Gmail and then they need to go through that other door I called account reset? Do you know how much money Google spends a year on SMS, OTP, and that operation? Any guesses? How's $100 million a year for you?
So interesting. So you're thinking this is a cost play,
First,
among other things.
Among other things, this is a pure, why are we paying so much for account reset? There's a problem. Like if you remember the Six Sigma days of analyzing where's the problem in the business, right? And TQM and all those things. This is a one-on-one of like, wait a second. So many people are being trapped in this door we've invented and it's costing us money. So I just want to, maybe Google's number is astronomical because they have billions of users. But if you look in your own business, however many users you have the same problem. It's just small enough that you didn't think about it. So that's one. The second, I want to be a little crisper. There's IAM and there's CIAM. Let's just talk about it for the listeners. Google is an Apple and Microsoft consumer, like think Xbox, are in the CIAM world, which is C for consumer, which is very different than IAM world, which is, your login at work. So I'm not going to answer your question. I do think that it's already beyond want to be the IDP for consumers. They are. And the proof is very simple. Many websites today that you go to and try to log in already have now a pop-up that asks, do you just want to use the Google credential? Now, no one's talking about how it works and the cookies and how, let's put that aside. But I do think we are in a kind of 1-2 punch mode. Right now, they can take username and a cookie to let you in. And that totally makes sense with session, longevity and all that. But if you ask me, there is no reason for them not to replace that very mechanism with passkeys. And they've just turned the internet passwordless just by taking all the username and passwords they already have and in the back end replacing it as we go. I don't know anything, but I think that's the end game. It makes total sense. And then they become the SSO of the internet. Now their friends at Apple and Microsoft probably have similar plans, and I'm a customer of Apple and Google and Microsoft, right? So I don't think there's going to be just one, but yes, I do think Google is making an amazing move in the CIAM world, and there's no reason for them not to be here in this conference to make sure that the standard goes where it needs to go.
I think you're saying there's benefit for them, but the real one who benefits is the internet. It's kind of getting to that vision of fixing the broken internet that you're talking about.
I do think that. But again, corporations make money. I love Google. I don't say anything
Nothing
other than
wrong with making money.
there's nothing wrong. As long as you use it for the right reasons and you don't do any evil with it. We all know that. But I do think they're sitting on the exact right data to become that SSO/IDP for the internet.
It's funny you bring that up because I think about this as social login terms. It's been around for a while. And I think everybody probably has developed what their preference is for login with X, depending on age, background, industry, right? You may have other things, right? Some people are like, I log in everything with Facebook. And other people are like, there's no way in hell you'd catch me logging with Facebook to anything, right? I personally use a lot of login by Google because I don't want to have to remember which service did I use for what and things like that. So I find it interesting that we're setting the stage for that. It's almost like we're having that same, social login of choice question again. Yep. What I would like to see in this space is being able to be more mobile with things like passkeys. I have multiple passkeys that I've set up across Mac, iOS, Windows, Google, etc. At some point, and I think this is something that's being worked on by folks, is the transportation of those keys. Yep. iCloud and the keychain is one method of it. Microsoft has their version of it. Google has their version of it. But what happens when you want to shift across ecosystems? I think that's an area that still requires some thought and interoperability. And a while back, someone came up to me from LastPass at a conference. It was actually Authenticate 2 years or 3 years ago. And I've told this story before, but I'll say it again. They came up and they talked about, what's the role of a password manager, if we're moving away from passwords. And I didn't see the badge. I didn't know who they were, right? And I was like, well, I don't really know if I see a role for a password manager, because if we don't have passwords, what is it you're putting in your password manager? And it took me a little while, but now I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, well, maybe they are the glue that lets people shift from one ecosystem to another.
Glue.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you think something similar or if I'm off on that.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're off, but again, I am a straight shooter. I'm just going to say it like it is. I think the good news is that we have the top 3 browser manufacturers at the table. It took 7 years, but the bad news is that we have the top 3 browser manufacturers at the table. They can't agree on anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if they really want a better internet, which is a different question, do they want to have a better walled garden for themselves? Do you see that difference? Then there should be a right to move my passkeys from anywhere to anywhere, just like the banking industry already has open banking. It has to be part, because otherwise you're just making me get stickier and stickier somewhere and I can't move, and I don't know that that's a better internet for anybody. I am not sure that necessarily the password keepers should only be relegated to the intergalactic moves, because they do have a role, let me say it, which is storing the private keys. Now, I know it goes on the secure enclave, blah, blah, blah. I know how the technology works, and you don't really need them. But I hope this will be a good segue to why I think UX is the key to making this really, really work for people all the way to my mom. Because if the UX will be snazzy and easy and understandable, we now have a shot of having the problem of multi-platform migration.
So,
it's even going to be a problem. Right now, I worry, back to what I do, is if we don't give the UX enough, almost like be a first violin for a long while, it has been a third violin or none for a while. If we don't switch from the tech to the UX, we will end up with an amazing dream that had all the stars aligned, but without the execution that will actually take the world by storm. And my job is to make sure the world will be taken by storm and do whatever we can to do it. But I don't want to fool you. We're not there yet because of the doubt. And is it the year? And I'll wait until somebody else does it. There's a lot of people who are thinking they still need to sit on their hands and wait. And I'm saying, no, start now so we can easily get the kinks out of the system, so then you can go copy each other and we will be on our way.
So I'm glad you mentioned UX. So you're a real pros pro. Thanks for helping me set that up. We talked with Kevin Goldman from your company last year at this same conference, and he's invested a lot of time being part of FIDO's UX committee. You just talked about the importance of that usability when it comes to these sorts of things. Tell me more about that.
I want to set the record straight. So, Kevin, hi. In 2019, the FIDO folks met in Lisbon. And that's the year, it was 4 years ago, that I as CEO saw that if we don't change something now and just let the techies run the world, and trust me, it was after a few, pause for effect, skirmishes between me and lovely people like Dave Turner, which I love, who helped me understand there's such zealots for security around the table that even an iota off center is not acceptable. And I said, guys, then you're just going to have techie people in the admin department using, I don't want to say which hardware provider, it doesn't matter. That's what this effort is going to be. It is not going to be for everyone I meet on a plane and telling them we're on a journey to get rid of password. Take a deep breath, because that's the truth. Now, I will commend Andrew for realizing that and allowing me to send Kevin.
Enter Shakir.
Andrew Shakir, yes. See, I was trying to give him like the...
Like share.
Like share, exactly. That Andrew. To send Kevin, and Kevin and I worked on the presentation of, well, what should we say? But I do want to say today, and I saved it for this podcast, I moved this chess piece called UX, and let me tell you, it did not end well the first time. And Kevin, I'm sorry again. I'm not going to say it publicly so every listener can hear it. I know from you, and I know from others, and I know from Abby Barbier, and I've heard what happened there. It was terrible. People gave him the evil eye. He was booed off stage. People looked at him walking in the conference like, who the hell are you talking to us about? What is this UX thing? We don't need it. Ugh, go back to Arizona. I mean, I know it did not go well. But if no one was brave enough to make that move, we wouldn't be here today where Kevin is leading the UX work stream, which Trusona basically shoved into the organization, I'm sorry to say, because they didn't want to hear about it.
I'm not sure how you have a gap that large, given how important usability is to everybody. Nobody wants to use a product that sucks. I mean, that's just the way it is.
If you were there in Lisbon 4 years ago, that is not the party line. It was leave us alone. We don't need UX. We have perfect security. And all I said, like, great, perfect security will be used by less than 1% of the world. And if that's your objective, great, but I don't want to have any part of it. But if you want to take this seriously, here are the things that are missing. One, UX, and when you hear the word UX, which company in the world, I'm not even saying from the 3 browser manufacturers, which company in the world comes to mind? Yes, that one, in Cupertino. If they're not around the table, and if they're not adopting it, I'm telling you again, it will not be a big thing. So all these things started lining up, and basically I told Kevin, go spend as much time as you need on our dime, because we're paying his salary.
Yeah, you're paying a salary.
And if it's news for people, let them know. He is on our payroll, spending a lot of time. Ask Andrew Shikiar how much time. Because if no one's going to do that and get the discipline of UX, it's never going to happen. So I'm happy to say that 4 years later, now it's obvious. It was not obvious. And I hope it will keep being obvious, because without this, nothing big will happen here.
So you kind of triggered me here, because UI has been something that I feel has never gotten enough credit. And this goes back to early 2000s when I first started to work on identity things. And, that was one of my pain points, was the identity interfaces were garbage. They were hard to use, didn't make sense. And I'm going to get on a soapbox here. I really think if you're listening to this and you're in an identity program, you have an identity product, whatever it is, treat it like a product, because people really need to understand and want to use your product, or they're not going to use it and they're going to find ways around it. And maybe it's they choose a different product. Maybe it's they do something insecure and harm your organization because they don't like using your internal product, whatever it may be. So I get passionate about the UI stuff because it just drives me crazy. I saw what Apple did very early on, and I was like, yes. Like, why can't we take that same model? Do they do innovation? Yes, of course they do. Are they the most innovative company in the world? I would argue probably not, but they're really good at taking a first draft and polishing it to almost perfection. Everything is with purpose. It's purposely designed. There is intention behind things. And I think if we take that mentality to not only just identity products, but to programs, people, processes that are associated with it, you're going to be much better off going down the road.
I'll share with you this. When Trusona started, we had all the money in the world from Kleiner Perkins. And here we are going on a journey to design the world's most secure authentication with $1 million insurance. So what do? I go reach out to a San Francisco and product engineering design firm, the same people who made the Fitbit. Like Frog Design and IDEO, there's New Deal Design. Here's a plug for them. And I said, we need something that looks like something that James Bond would carry it, because when you pull this thing out of your suitcase and use it, people need to say, whoa, I want one of these. Even if it's a status symbol, I don't even know what it does. I just want one of these. So we go on a year in stealth mode. And then through that journey with those designers, first of all, I have learned a little bit more about design thinking than I thought I knew what it was, but I didn't know what it was. And then I realized, you know what, to really be successful, I need somebody with those muscles and sinews on this team. So I go back to the investor and say, I want to have a designer. They're like, are you sure you want that? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, there's no security company with designers in them. I'm like, but why? It's like, because I won't say what they said. It doesn't matter today. But they warned me that designers see the world a certain way. Admin and security people see it very differently. Here's a joke for you. Only in the drug industry and in the identity industry, they call the customers users.
There's our clip for the show.
Okay? And I said, wow, why do you think that is? Because they see them as, I'm admin, you're a user, I'm smart, you're dumb, I'm not responding to phishing, you are. And if once you bring that consumery, fluffy, let's be nice to people, all of a sudden you're going to have a dichotomy that you don't even imagine, Mr. CEO. And I said, like, good, I want it. So I asked around, who's the best designer we have here in the town? So like, everybody knows who that person is, but you're never going to get him. I'm like, good, I want to know. I said, oh, Kevin Goldman. I'm like, good. I realized Kevin works at the company, and I just sign up to do a session with him, a few days, teach us how to learn and speak in the language of designer. So we go in, we do the so many days session with him, and, we're about to leave. But Kevin came to me and said to me, I've been doing this for a while. I've seen a lot of CEOs and teams work together, and like, you really guys care about this. Like, you're not here like you want your ideas to be implemented, and whatever the other engineer said doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, if we don't get this right, why did I just get out of retirement? He's like, you're serious? I'm like, of course I'm serious. Like, to him it was, I guess many other customers have lip service. I don't know. We ended up recruiting Kevin to be a C-level executive at a startup that does security. And I'm now challenging the two J's, go find me another company like that. Because then you'll know we took it seriously. Now, we took it seriously for ourselves first. I'm not going to lie about that. Because we wanted to rise above. We wanted our app to be Apple-esque. I'm not lying. Go see our app in the App Store. Tell me if you've seen an app like this. It is, you know what? I'll tell you this. If you have online, go to WordPress, go see the Trusona plugin, and go to the reviews. Tell me what the reviews say. Only 5-star reviews. And how do you think we got there? By chance? No. By having UX as a third of the equation of what makes this company tick. A third of our strategy is all about UX.
So, Ori, I want to give you a chance to say great things about the FIDO Alliance, but first let me do my preamble. So, you've made this large investment to basically give a bunch of Kevin's time, pay the all those travel expenses for him to be here, but also just, you guys are all in. I talked to Kirk Johnson, who's with Beyond Identity. He's out there, one of the vendors in the expo hall, and he said, this isn't one of those conferences that you do like raw business development. Like there's a bunch of, quote unquote prospective customers who are just hitting your booth up all day and you get a bunch of leads. It's like you have to kind of support what the FIDO Alliance is doing. If you base your business on this, you've got to invest. I want to know, being at that investor level that you are, what is it about FIDO Alliance that makes it worth the investment, that gives you dividends?
I love the question. If you are trying to be part of the passwordless revolution, which I jokingly say I'm the unofficial leader of, just because of the time spent and the money put in and the UX and a lot of different things that should remain unknown, you can't get there without banding with your brethren, maybe enemies is another, or competitors, because it is so large. It's a monumental task, and no one company can do it, not even Apple. So participating in helping FIDO be successful, you know how they say all boats rise on the tide? FIDO is our tide. Now, it wasn't perfect at first, as I said before. And the origin story of FIDO was very much about hardware and being perfect, which I love, but that will not solve the problem for more mere mortals, I guess. So if you want to be, I don't care who you are, You have to have FIDO now, and passkeys is part of a table stakes, first-class citizen entity, even if you're a password vault. You know why? Because you'll need to store them, make it easy to use, not argue with the browsers, and be cross-galactic later on, right? But there's no more going back. If anybody's still thinking, oh yeah, this is a fad. No, this is not a fad. This is happening, and let me just rattle some names. You can go see them on passkeys.directory. eBay and Intuit and Kayak and Robinhood and Microsoft and Google and Apple and Trusona, and all these companies are not crazy. TikTok, they already have put it into their main business. Now, I'm not saying tomorrow everybody's jumping on it. I didn't say that. But thank God, not knocking on the table to make noise for the Microsoft. Thank God. We now have it. So we can begin now the priming, which is a UX term, and the marketing and the cajoling of, hey, I'll give you a discount if you get the password. Because I don't have to deal with your ATO, account takeover, if you know that one. Because I'm an airline and I'm tired of you calling me and says, where are my miles? Well, are you still using a password that is password? Sorry, if you upgrade to passkeys, I will not have to deal with you or be in a conversation. And you won't, like, let me give you peanuts, 2 sacks of peanuts on your next flight. Sorry, I just landed. If you do this. That is the next thing in this evolution. But now we have a technology that is tested, vetted on 4 billion devices. There's no excuse for you as an implementer to sit on your hands. Get started.
If I get the 2 sacks of peanuts, can I also have the whole can of soda?
No,
I mean,
that is
You're
very
crazy,
thirsty.
man.
No, that's going to be $5.
That's for closers.
What you just described sounds very similar to what we see in the finance industry where, if you sign up for auto pay, there's a discount, right? I'll pick on T-Mobile just because I use T-Mobile, and I get $5 off my bill if I use auto draft, right, to pay my bill automatically. What you just described sounded very similar to that. I'm going to give you a chance. Is that what you meant? Or do you really see businesses shifting financial either incentive or other carrots to say, hey, if you're a passkey user, theoretically, you are lower cost to us to do business with. Therefore, we can pass some of that savings on to you in some way.
I meant that. Let's give some examples so we're very clear. This is not the mince word show I told. This is a say it like it is show. Say that I'm one of the largest credit card companies in the country. Okay? I now have, because I've operated for 30 years, all my numbers in front of me. I know what an average cost of acquisition is. I have the cost of how many times you're calling me, how many times you are upset with me, how many times do I need to refund you because you did something silly, and how many times I need to refund you because you didn't do anything. Right? And there's cost. Okay. If you take 81% of all the costs that are related to fraud, 81%, and you dig, ask for 5 whys, you know what the answer is? I won't say identity because this is the Identity at the Center show, but it's passwords, which is a very good proxy to your identity online is protected by a key, and the key is a static key called the password. Like, I'm just going down 9 levels and you see it's there, it's right there. And now, as a banker with grubby hands that wants to pay less, I'm not joking, this is how this works. And I just want to have less phone calls from you. What do I need to do? I look at all the calls and I see, wow, 30 of them are about account loss and another 2 are about, is this fraud on my statement, right? So I can remove 5 calls. By the way, that's $18 a pop if you want to match that cost. Wait a second, so I'm going to get $60. Can I offer you $10 off something? Even if it's a coupon, something that you, but you will feel you're getting something. Yes, I can get you to do whatever I want if it makes financial sense. Just like I don't need to print your statement again. That costs money, and then postage and whatever. There is a cost, guys. It is known and attributable. It's not a fantasy thing that you can now trade with me to say you want me to do what you want. And by the way, it's good for me too. Let's trade. Every consumer does this as we speak. I think it's just a matter of how big is your problem to make this go away.
So where are we at when it comes to the life cycle for passwords in this industry? We've alluded to this through the conversation. It's like, yeah, it feels like it's been dying for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, right? Nobody likes it. And everybody's like, yeah, we want to get rid of it. But I keep hearing that every year. I'm filled with optimism. I'm the eternal optimist that, hey, we've got passkeys. It's having a real moment in the sun. I think still it is very much in the domain of techies and identity people who are getting it. But then you have an announcement like what Google made last week, passkeys by default. Huge, yeah. So where are we at from the death of the password?
Okay.
When is the password going to die? I'm going to ask that question again.
So I'm going to start from the end and say passwords are probably not going to die in the way you think, where one day they're not there. And I want to be very, very precise about what I'm saying, where passwords probably will stay for another 50 years because they're harmless there. They don't cause issues. Then it's not what we need to fix. And it's usually within legacy systems in large corporations of two machines talking to each other. Let me tell you, they're probably going to stay there for a while. But I want to separate that from the real question you're asking, which when in our lifetime, as mere mortals, consumers online, we will have, 80%, 90%, there's going to be a bar because some websites, will take a while. But there's going to be that moment that, oh my God, if you don't offer passkeys, you're like a has-been brand. You're sending me your resume over fax. What's going on, right? Let's talk about that because that's the realistic expectation and something we could probably now measure in time. Because the other ones, they're just never going to happen, but I don't know that that's the goal or ever was the goal. So I'm going to go back from the history of time of FIDO because you'll see where the demarcation lines are. It couldn't have happened, meaning the clock couldn't start before Apple joined. Pausing so the listeners can see why. Let me tell you, because as a vendor, who joined the dark side, by the way, I go to a large bank and I say, hey, let's do this password listing. And they say, which browser supported? And you say, Chrome, oh, good. And Edge, and what about Safari? Oh, they're not on board yet. What do you think the knee-jerk reaction is? Well, we can't start a project until... Right? And we've lived through that at Trusona, and I'm sure other people, for about 7 years.
Yeah.
Let me say, we took money from investors for 7 years, thinking that it's so obvious we want to get rid of passwords that everybody will jump at once, right?
Yeah.
We were wrong.
What took so long for them to jump in?
Because the three big guys can't agree on anything, even if it's for their own benefit. There, I'm saying it. I'm not blaming. I'm just saying it's like seismic shifts.
But what was the thing that said, okay, obviously you're not Apple, we're pontificating here about, but what was it that made Apple think, okay, now is the time to jump in and do it?
They should answer this question, but I do think there was so much momentum building that all of a sudden you looked like, oh my God, I'm going to be left behind, okay? Especially when Google just made that announcement last week. I mean, it's a big like turtle and hare race. They have to move. So all I'm saying is we can't start the clock of every year we thought this was going to happen and did it just because we're realistic, right? Until Apple moved. So that happened June 6th of 2022. Now I want to be even more realistic. It wasn't in the browser that day because, releases, they announce in So only in October, look, if you're a developer and you get beta versions of Apple, sure, you could have seen it, but it wasn't GA. So only in October of last year, every browser, iOS 16, go look it up, now is capable, it knows how to handle it. And now you need to go to your boss, which I want to end. You can have more questions, but I do want to talk about how to get budgets for this because it's important. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't get the budgets and we don't explain to our boards why this is needed, it will be another 10 years, even though we can have it now. Get it? We can never have nice things.
I'll take any advice you can give because I think this is a conversation that Jim and I have in our day jobs is, look, everyone wants to go passwordless. How do they create the budget?
Yes.
Funding to do that because we live in the real world.
And the excitement. Money. Okay, so let's talk about it. I just want to say that it was not fair to count time before last October, even though I wanted it to happen 7 years ago. So I'm just speaking from the heart. But now the technical issue is aside. Note I didn't say it's perfect. But it is no longer the reason why you can just say, I don't want to do this. Okay, so now if you can do it, let's talk how 2024 is the year you're going to go passwordless. This is an advice you can use for any IT project. I'm giving it to you in the context of passkeys, but I've been around and I'm having the same conversations like you, and I'll just say it. Are you allowed to tell jokes on this podcast?
Yeah, definitely.
So I do have a joke about how do you spot the extrovert engineer. Do you know how?
No.
When they're talking to you, they're staring at your shoes.
They're staring at what?
Your shoes.
Oh.
I like that. I'm gonna repurpose that, draw inspiration from
Please.
that. Yeah.
I'm saying it with all the love. I'm an engineer myself, but I crossed to the dark side. I became a vendor and a marketer and whatnot. I understand that it's very difficult to live in a 0-1 API world. I'm an admin, you're a user, and make the leap to let me make a presentation that will show you how much money we will save and how our customers will be happier. I understand that's not normal and easy and natural. I understand it. But if you are in that middle of like you're a CISO or you're an IAM leader, which you obviously grew up in tech, nobody in sales and marketing is an IAM leader, last I checked, right? You have to take some advice of how to talk about this so you'll get the right excitement, buy-in, and then budget. A lot of people ask for budget, but it's like I say, I want $1,000. For what? Wouldn't it be so easier to say, hey, would you like to put all the employees in a car to go see a movies and that will improve morale? Of course we do. How much is it? It's $1,000. Same conversation. But you first tell me, why should we do anything? So let me recap. Our customer experience will be better. 2, we will not spend money on phone calls and SMS OTP on account resets because last I checked, even Gartner is recording it. 30% of our costs there. And 3, if you hate the phishing and the losses and calling people to say sorry that you lost your records, money, miles, whatever it is, you want to be in less of those? Good. Let's protect those accounts in a technology that is easy to use and not phishable. Wow, that sounds really good. Are other companies doing it? Yes. Rattle off some names. Google, blah, blah, blah. How much is it? Good. Now you're in the conversation. But don't go to your boss and say, I need some money to do passwordless.
Focus on the outcome.
Yes, deliver the friggin' outcomes. Tell them what they're going to get. And if you can't speak on this, with all the respect, guys, you should not be going to ask for them. You're not ready. Go do some homework. Go talk to your favorite vendor and say, how do I sell this? How do I package it up? So I'm told, do it and do it now. Then you're successful. And by the way, you can take this advice to any project. You want to do, I don't know, AML, you want to do new email system, you want to do new cloud, I don't know. Find the benefit, no more than 3. Sell those, help quantify it. I'm sure you have friends somewhere in the business that will help you. And then go to your boss with a 4-slide deck that shows I've done my homework. And then if they want to say no, guys, fine. But don't just go ask for budget for some technical whiz-bang term, especially if they never heard of FIDO. I don't even know what this is, without explaining the why. There.
I don't know how we can top that, so we should probably start to wrap things up because that was amazing. I want to talk, though, about some of the other things that you work on that are not necessarily identity related. You work with organizations called Thorn and Ball to All. You mind sharing with folks what those are?
Sure. I'll start with Thorn and NECMEC and the Noble and other organizations that are built from people who've been mainly in financial services, but not only. And their job is to curb the funding of child exploitation online, which ends up with, people call it human trafficking, but it's really a very simple thing. It's snatching kids, mainly girls, in the mall, in a city like Phoenix where I live, and the rest you can imagine. That's just terrible, and it's happening in our society, but we don't talk about it enough because it's so devastating and so terrible, and the world maybe is not ready for it. I understand the evening news is very, very peppy, but we have to, as a society, not let the bad guys have the upper arm. And with internet anonymity, maybe that's relating to identity, and with Bitcoin and crypto that allow you to do transactions without an identity. You see how it all comes back to the same thing? Mm-hmm. I'm just volunteering my time, donating with my wife to organizations, and have been to NECMEC, the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, and to Thorn, to develop software to help stop this and really go rescue children. If you are listening to the podcast, go to wearethorn.org and just see how many children were saved this year as a result of using the software we're working on. Ball to All is another organization I'm involved with, and for full disclosure, I started over 10 years ago. It is a very simple organization with a very simple mission. I'll paint a picture for you. Imagine you have refugees and who escaped, I don't know, ISIS in Iraq, and now they're in a UN camp. Okay, a big truck comes in with it says U.S. Aid on the truck, and let me tell you what they take off the truck. There are beds, amazing. Clothes, amazing. Rice, amazing. So they're giving you sustenance for another day, which is amazing, by the way. But what do you think those kids there do? They're sitting there and do nothing. So Ball to All is a very simple organization that says every kid in the world who might not have $10 to go purchase a soccer ball and kick it around can have one. The real issue is like you have street urchins in many, many countries who are up to no good, not because they want to be, because they're just poor. And now you have extremists talking to them and say the world hates you, no one cares about you. Let me tell you, it's very easy recruiting grounds for all kinds of stuff. But when our ambassador shows up to the center of town and sees these 10 and just hands him a soccer ball, go see the pictures and you'll tell me. So for $10, we give one child or a group of kids a soccer ball and their entire afternoon, and maybe their life is now changing to another direction where no extremist can talk to a kid who's chasing a ball, last I checked.
That's
So
amazing.
That's what we do.
That's amazing. I mean, bravo, kudos. Another thing that I'm not sure if enough people know about this or anybody really knows about it, but you're also in the movie business. Tell me about Ori, the movie producer.
So it's funny that you ask. I've been searchable online for a long time.
But nobody associates, oh, here's this guy who's leading an identity company. And oh, by the way, he also produces movies, right?
So I've spent more than 20 years fighting fraud, right? 20 years. But Google now tags me as a film producer. Like, okay, thank you, Google. I'm not saying I'm not, but what about the rest of my life?
Most interesting fact. about
I
you.
guess. Maybe there's like a table, of like, oh yeah, number 5 is fraud and number 2 is film. So, okay, give him the higher value of... Anyway, there's an algorithm for that. I'm super happy. 9 years ago, I started with my first film, which was a documentary about my father's cousin, who since then had a TED Talk at age 100, and now there's a Broadway kind of show about him in a book. And I thought that was it. I just wanted to have a movie about an amazing life story. He happened to have an amazing Holocaust story. And I thought that was that. And then I get a call from Nancy Spielberg, the sister of, to say, hey, we're working on this movie. Would you like to be involved? And I'm like, sure. So in the same coffee shop we talked about, remember? We met and we've done our next movie, which was the first film ever to be shown at the UN. It's called Who Will Write Our History? And opened the Berlin Film Festival. In case you're not in the movie, it's like saying, I won an Oscar. And it's like, what did he just say? Opening the Berlin Film Festival is an amazing thing. Including the person who runs the show says, anybody that wants a ticket, I'll buy them a free ticket to see this. This is how important this film is. And from one thing to the next, I'm now on my 20th movie. And yes, I'll mention the one that today we got the good news as soon as I landed here, that it's now nominated to Critics' Choice Award, which is It Ain't Over. And it is the first biography or documentary rather on Yogi Berra. And not him necessarily as the coach, but him as the player and him as the person. I'll give you just one highlight from this movie, which, by the way, if you're online, go check the Rotten Tomatoes on that movie and tell me if you've seen anything like this before. People love this movie.
It's a 98%.
It's just, people love this movie. I will give you one kind of anecdote from the movie just so you'll see. He was in D-Day, storming in Normandy, okay? Got injured to the point that you should get a Purple Heart and didn't fill the form because he didn't want his mom to worry. And by the time his family discovers this, everybody who has witnessed to this is like in their 90s and they just weren't there. So he said, I don't care about the Purple Heart. I just want to serve my country. And it's like, you wouldn't even know that about him. So when we heard all the things that he had done, that like his relationship with Jackie Robinson, and you always say, oh my God, there's like so much more to this man. And I can just tell you, I wish I would grow up to be like him when you see the movie.
Yeah, I mean, he grew up in the streets playing stickball in New York City, right?
Actually, in St. Louis, in Dego Hill. See, I've learned all that
St.
in the
Louis,
movie.
you're right.
But then moved to New York and, again, became an amazing player.
Yeah. 10 World Series rings. I'm a Yankees fan, but of all the Yankees shirts that I have, one of them, and I mean, the man's lived an amazing life, or lived an amazing life. And there's a museum dedicated to him at Montclair State University.
Where I graduated. And again, he was a commencement speaker. Like, all these things kind of line up in your life and you don't even realize.
Yeah.
Like, I'm there graduating from Montclair. He is the commencement. And, like, who knew that 20 years later, I'm helping to fund the movie about him, right? It's just, life is interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. You also mentioned the 100-year-old person who survived the Holocaust, and
Eddie Jackie. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of documentaries about, people who have survived the Holocaust, and they're all so humble because they all realize that there's just luck that they made it and the person next to them didn't.
Right. His book is called The Happiest Man on Earth. And after going through, again, I know he's a family member and I may be biased, but when you see and read his life story, you say, okay, this just can't be what this man went through. And his entire life after the war was to teach love and not hate. And he lived in Sydney. He was like a living exhibit in the Jewish museum down there, so we went to visit him. But imagine, again, maybe it's very apropos for what's happening in the world today, but don't say, I hate you. And that's his line. Say, I don't like you, which is fine. We can disagree. But hate breeds atrocities. And let me tell you, after this man and what he has seen and went through, if there's one thing I can leave the audience with is like, hate never, it's a Maya Angelou line, hate never solved anything in the world, but it sure did create a lot of problems. So don't hate. You can say I don't like something. I don't like passwords.
Are you sure it's not hate? You don't
we will help them leave this world gently, very humanely.
There you
but
go.
Don't hate.
That's a good way to end this. I think this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. I'm going to have a bunch of links in our show notes for people to connect with you on LinkedIn, learn more about Trusona. Definitely links to both Thorn and Ball to all, so people can check those out as well. Really do appreciate you taking the time. This is the last of our recordings that we're doing here at Authenticate. Always end on a high note is Costanza's line. I think we accomplished that big time. So we'll go ahead and leave it there. You can visit us on the web at idacpodcast.com. We're on Twitter at idacpodcast, Mastodon at idacpodcast, at infosec.exchange. Connect with Jim and I. Definitely want to thank the Authenticate folks for helping us put this together. So definitely shout out to Andrew, Megan, and Adrian for helping make this happen, and definitely to RSM for funding our little excursion out here to have this conversation. So,
And also thank you to our listeners. If they've been sticking with us through all these episodes, I mean, thank you, kudos to you.
yeah, for sure. And to everybody who came up and said hello and, thanks for putting us out and all that stuff, that's the kind of stuff that keeps us going. So definitely appreciate it. So with that, we'll leave it there. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk with everyone in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com and find us on Twitter at IDAC Podcast. See you next time on Identity at the Center.